Emmerdale's been home to its fair share of extraordinary drama. But now a very different kind of real-life excitement is on the way. For the very first time, the cast of Emmerdale are throwing open the doors of this iconic Yorkshire set to host a unique First World War centenary street party.
Men less than half my age gave their lives for the country.
To honour the British men and women who made huge sacrifices during the Great War.
We can never forget what these men did for us.
A host of Emmerdale's most famous faces, old and new, are about to leave the set behind and step back 100 years into the past to celebrate the lives of unsung local heroes who drove the war effort.
I consider myself quite a strong woman, but these women were a different kind of breed.
From Woolpack chef to the real wartime cook.
This is a catastrophe.
Village vicar to the battlefield priest. Telly farmer to the real country land girl. And Emmerdale vet to the real front-line vet.
The weight of responsibility on that man's shoulders, he's amazing.
The cast of one of Britain's favourite soaps will uncover the extraordinary stories of these remarkable British men and women, who will be honoured when the cast come together to host their very own Emmerdale Armistice celebration. Tonight,
I'll see what I can rustle up, but we're a bit busy, so it won't be fancy.
actor Mark Charnock, better known as hapless chef Marlon Dingle, hangs up his apron at the Woolpack kitchen.
I'll see you later.
Bye.
And sets off on the trail of a local Yorkshire lad, a chef in the frontline trenches who left a remarkable wartime legacy.
It matters. It matters that we remember them. It just does.
Okay, full iron, please.
For nearly 50 years, Emmerdale and its cast have embodied the heart and soul of Yorkshire.
Okay, blocking and action.
But few people know this familiar set is based entirely on a real place, with a real Woolpack, a real community, and its own remarkable history. The village of Esholt. Now, with their centenary celebration looming, the cast of Emmerdale are delving into the history of this Yorkshire village and the incredible people who lived there 100 years ago. Mark Charnock's been digging into Esholt's archive and has discovered a local man who lived in this house in the village, Frederick Brocklehurst.
I'm very excited. I just want to know who he was, really.
All he knows is that during the First World War, Fred was a frontline cook serving with the West Yorkshire Regiment.
It's an adventure. I sort of want to, through history, befriend him, I guess.
So today, Mark's come to Bradford to meet local historian Bob Richardson,
Bob?
Hello, Mark.
I'm Mark. Nice to meet you.
who stumbled across a remarkable photo album at a flea market in Skipton, which should help Mark get to know his frontline chef a little better.
Well, here it is.
Oh.
This is the album.
I've got goosebumps. Snaps of the War, F.T. Brocklehurst. So what we got first?
Well, if we have a look inside, it's here's the man himself there.
Shaving in the
He looks
trenches.
confident in the front-line trench.
As Fred's battalion moved through their postings from the trenches in France to the Belgian Battle of Ypres, he captured the ins and outs of his everyday experience, living, fighting and cooking on the front line.
Dishing out the grub is written here.
Dishing out the grub, that's right, yes.
Do you know, the more I see him, the cockier he looks. He's sort of like...
That's it, yeah.
He's just confident. He's got a confidence
Yes,
about
that's
him, and he's
right.
a show-off.
And there, that tells you a lot about his character, doesn't it, there? It says Brock, that's Brocklehurst,
Oh.
chatting, and chatting was getting rid of lice which got in your clothes.
So what's he doing here?
Cigarette,
Yeah.
and then you burnt them out of your clothes, the seam of your clothes.
Is that what he's doing? So
They'd
it's
be-
like,
they were all
no,
alive with lice.
Where's your respirator?
Where's your respirator?
He's definitely a cheeky northern rascal.
It looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it does there.
Fred's pictures have given Mark a glimpse into his life on the front line.
The photo album, it's a one-off piece of history, you know? An amazing sort of testament to what went on in there.
But they've also raised more questions about who Fred was and how he ended up cooking in the trenches. So Mark's going to meet someone who can fill in the blanks and give him a taste of frontline cooking. First World War trench life expert, Andy Robertshaw,
Nice to see you.
who's built something rather unexpected in the field near his house.
What the deuce is that? That is Hawthorne Trench, a replica of a trench system on the Somme that we've built for teaching.
Can we go and have a look at it, please?
I
That
think
looks
so.
Absolutely stunning.
Over the course of the First World War, 1,500 miles of trenches were dug across the Western Front. Here in Kent, Andy's recreated a 200-metre section.
You're stepping down now into my crawl. Okay, you have to watch your head as you come under here, and we're now actually in the British front line.
Is it wrong to say that the little boy in me is very, very excited right now?
Well,
it's just astounding.
Troops would have been stationed for up to a week in trenches just like these. Always at risk of gas attacks, shells and gunfire. This is where Fred, the battalion chef, would cook their meals.
Seems like a daft question, but what have you been expected to fight to?
They've got to be able to fire and throw grenades like everybody else.
So you're a soldier first and a cook second?
Absolutely.
Fred's incredible photos give historians like Andy a unique insight into conditions on the front line. And having looked into Fred's story a little deeper, Andy's got some more information for Mark.
He starts off as an infantryman. There he is with his rifle and everything else. And then one day, the company cook is killed. Someone says to him, "You, Private Brocklehurst, are now cook."
But no training as a cook beforehand. Just literally, it's just thrust upon him, that responsibility.
And just show you how difficult it might be, I'll show you the sort of place he might have been working.
Wonderful.
Just 25 years old when he signed up, Fred was a Yorkshire lad born and bred, the middle child of 5. Like Mark, he was over 6 feet tall, not unnatural for the cramped conditions of a trench kitchen.
So I'm spending my war doing this,
If you want to stay alive, certainly, absolutely.
Fred survived some of the front line's deadliest battles in just his first year of service, but he was still woefully unprepared for being suddenly thrust into the role of battalion chef. And he's giving Mark a taste of what unexpectedly cooking in the trenches might have been like.
Every day, the quartermasters behind the lines will send all the food for 6 blokes in one sandbag. You've got an open fire on which we've got our cooking pot, and then obviously we've got a bit of wrinkly tin over our heads to disperse the smoke.
So that would draw attention to people.
The Germans are looking for the smoke.
Yeah.
It could be that you walk away to get some ingredients, you come back and they put a shell right in your cookhouse. And very often you'd be cooking at night, but just to make sure you didn't have any smoke. Can you imagine the immense joy of preparing your ingredients in the dark?
Yeah.
The British Army aimed to feed each soldier 4,600 calories a day, almost double the recommended daily amount for an adult man nowadays, and much more than many of them would have got at home. But as Fred was to find out, that was easier said than done in conditions that were frequently appalling.
So I mean, it's all very well here. We're in blazing sunshine. When it's chucking it down, and you're trying to do this, you've got explosions, rats, dead bodies, bullets, the possibility of being blown up because you've got smoke coming out of it, and meanwhile, he's trying to focus on getting the corned beef in the pot.
And it could be that if the enemy attack, you've got to abandon that, mate, come and help us, we've got to shoot the enemy.
And like you just said, the guy before he's been killed. You know, so it's not, you know, he's not won the golden ticket, has he?
Absolutely, far from it.
Yet Fred would still have tried to provide 3 square meals a day, every day, for his men.
Have we reached the moment of truth?
I think we have. Shall we have a go?
Yeah.
How much do you want?
That'll do for me. Let's do it.
OK, ready? Let's go for it.
Oh, you know what?
What do you want?
That's really quite good. That's going to warm you up, innit?
Oh, Christ, it's nice.
Yeah.
Fred's incredible photo album gives a truly unique insight into the conditions of the front line. But creating that legacy wasn't without its dangers.
The thing about it is that this photograph shouldn't exist.
Why?
You weren't allowed cameras. Soldiers weren't allowed to have cameras. Wow. He's in a real trench, having a photo taken by his mate, let alone, you know, get into trouble. He could end up dead taking that.
So this has obviously blown my mind. You get a sense of the intimacy, the cramped conditions, but also that this cook, this guy, this handsome devil, was risking his life to give food to his mates.
All the cast members have their own part to play in the extraordinary armistice tribute they're planning at the village. And Mark's task is cooking up some delicious First World War-inspired grub. So he's on the hunt for a fitting way to honour Fred and all the frontline cooks like him.
Marlon, my character in Emmerdale, he was an untrained chef, and he was sort of just thrust into it, really, and had to sort of make his way through it, making it up as he went along. That's exactly what happened to Fred when he went into the army. He didn't go in as a cook. Dare I say it, there's this kind of dingliness to him.
Mark's meeting Tony Hall, a specialist in historic army field cooking.
I'm Tony.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure.
And in his authentic Great War cookhouse, Tony's going to help Mark make something the troops would have loved to eat.
So as you can see here, we have an original 1915 military recipe book. So this is what would have been given to the cooks in the field. As you can see on each page, you have a whole day's menu.
Yeah.
Breakfast, fried liver and onions.
You know what? That might be a generational thing. Fried liver. Yeah.
Comfort food. Boiled puddings are always very popular.
Right, yes, of course,
and, I mean, you've got a bread and butter pudding there.
Yeah, just like the mum used to make, right?
We do a currant roll.
A currant roll?
Yes.
You're talking my language, let's go for it. Yeah.
Right.
Better known as Spotted Dick, Fred and his battalion mates would have grown up eating family staples just like this. And as his extraordinary photos reveal, cooking facilities on the front line were severely limited, so after months away from home, the troops would have been desperate for some home comforts.
Right, next stage is we sprinkle it with currant.
Fred was part of a corps of more than 330,000 men trying to keep the troops fed over the course of the war. These culinary heroes made sure more than 3 million tons of food were transported to the 5 million soldiers dotted around the world.
I guess this is what Fred would have done, because he'd have been learning on the job,
yes.
wouldn't he?
Yes, this is it. I mean, when you think the men are coming in, they may have done a little bit of cooking at home, but at the time, the kitchen was the ladies'.
Do you know what, though? This, for me, is the comfort food's comfort food.
Yeah. Wait till you get that on your plate with some nice condensed milk.
Oh, I can't wait.
The troops would absolutely love that.
Yeah.
But using only Sawyer stoves like this, difficult to light and to keep burning, battalion cooks struggled to make many of the dishes the troops craved.
That's my masterpiece. I think Fred would be proud of that.
Yeah.
So nostalgic puddings, prepared very easily and simply boiled, were incredibly popular.
How long for this, then?
About 2.5 hours.
OK. Oh, that's good. Look at that. The journey, for me, you know, getting to know Fred a little bit and getting to know what he went through in the trenches, and I guess it's just made me appreciate the individual in war and what people sacrificed. It matters. It matters that we remember them. It just does.
Coming up, with Emmerdale's armistice fast approaching, Mark had better get practicing if he's going to be ready for this gigantic celebration in time.
And why now am I immediately terrified?
And he uncovers a new, shocking fact about Fred, his frontline cook.
It was court-martial. Court-martial.
Court-martials.
To celebrate the centenary of the end of the First World War, Emmerdale's joining the nation to host a truly remarkable event.
I've got to make 5 of these.
Are you going to have time? Because you know
I
that
don't
we
know
are...
if I'm going to have time.
Less talking, more cooking.
Oh, my God.
See ya!
Cast members old and new are pulling together to honour the extraordinary local men and women, living just a stone's throw from where the set now stands, who stepped up when the country needed them.
Is it wrong to say that the little boy in me is very, very excited right now?
Actor Mark Charnock's on the trail of an extraordinary young Yorkshireman and Esholt resident. First World War cook, Frederick Brocklehurst.
There's more to this guy than meets the eye.
Oh, yeah, far more.
Mark's already followed Fred from his home in Yorkshire to the trenches of the front line.
So we know that, as well as being the cook, he's got a little bit of irreverence to him as well. You know, he snuck that camera into the trenches. He's posing for pictures. He's got something about him that I immediately like.
And now he's heading back to Bradford to see if Bob Richardson can help him discover what happened next.
Is there anything else you can tell me about him, Bob?
There is. It's, perhaps the most interesting event was in December 1916, when they'd had a pretty tough time in the trenches, and he was sent to a local village before all the troops went out to arrange lodgings and food for the soldiers.
Yeah.
But he couldn't find any coal or wood to light a fire. He did see a dump of coal in the village, and he decided that he'd go and steal from the coal dump. And unfortunately, it was being watched by some detectives, because soldiers had previously been stealing coal there. and so he was immediately arrested.
Oh!
Quite a serious offence.
But even with the fact that he was trying to help feed his men and get it all ready
That's
for
right,
them.
yes.
Oh, my
He was arrested, yes.
God.
And you can see from this fragment here, dated January 1917, it was court-martialed.
Court-martialed.
And the finding was guilty.
It says it there, I can see it.
He was guilty.
Immediately, the phrase court-martial makes me think of a firing squad.
This is only a fragment, and I think perhaps you need to get some more information.
Oh,
go there, yes.
Bob, don't leave me hanging like this.
The idea that you'd go through a war, that you'd put yourself in all that danger, and then that you might get done by a firing squad for nicking a few lumps of coal to keep your fellow soldiers warm seems extraordinarily unjust. So I'm worried for him. I so want him to have had a life after the war, some kind of life.
But before Mark can find out what happened to his Yorkshire chef, he's planning to make something in Fred's honour at Emmerdale's big event. And that means, for once, he's not just going to be acting like a cook.
I've been in the show for 22 years, and my cooking skills, right, having played a chef that long, you'd think they'd be extensive, but they're really quite limited.
So, in desperate need of practice, Mark's come to the Prince William of Gloucester barracks in Grantham.
And why now am I immediately terrified? For no reason at all.
He's meeting Bob Oberhofer, a fifth-generation military cook.
It's nice to meet you, I'm Mark.
I'm Bob. So the mission is 12:30, got 20 soldiers coming.
Oh, God.
It may not be the Western Front, but today Bob's got his hands full feeding a squadron of hungry army reservists. And he's expecting Mark's help with dessert.
We're going to do like a hybrid sort of Danish pastry. So this is custard.
Come on.
Okay, with powdered milk and water.
Have you ever been in a position where they're arriving and it's just not ready? Have you always been on it?
Well, you have to be on it, don't you? You can't say, it's not ready. The army's marches on its own, doesn't it?
Quite right, yeah.
So if we don't sustain them, then they're not ready to fight.
You've got to keep them on the
You've got to
feet.
keep them on the feet. So, what we're going to do now, so this is tin fruit.
Yeah, delicious.
Yeah. What we're going to do.
Just like army cooks throughout history, Bob and Mark are making their pudding from basic rations.
Right then, so we'll keep cutting these.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a catastrophe. I've ruined the army.
So these soldiers are coming hungry.
There's 20 of them, right?
There's 20 of them.
Yeah.
And how many have we got in the time we've been chatting?
10.
10.
Half each.
Mark's failed to cook enough for all 20 soldiers, but there's no time to make more. Just like the privates of the Great War, after a morning of intensive training, these troops are desperate for their lunch.
Absolutely terrifying. They're coming now. Hello.
What is it, chef?
Right, what can I get you?
Quiche, please.
It's not calzone.
Yeah. And
another quiche.
They wouldn't have got quiche and calzone in the trenches, but the main course has gone down well. Now it's Mark's moment of truth.
All right, hold tight, everyone. This is pudding, but I'm going to put that in quite big inverted commas.
Yeah, we'll have the fruit swirl.
Really? Yeah. Go on!
You recognised it.
There you go. Can you believe your luck?
Thank you.
Come on, look at this. You're fighting over it. I've sold them all. Brilliant. At last. Can you believe it?
No, I can't really, to be fair.
That was even more intimidating than I thought it was going to be. And I can't begin to imagine how Fred could possibly do that in a drenched trench with rain pouring down and bombs going off. How, in the centre of all that, you put a meal together.
Mark's going to need a lot more practice if he's going to be ready in time for Emmerdale's Armistice Parade. But for now, he's back on the road, desperate for the end of Fred's story.
I don't know what Fred's fate was, having been court-martialed for nicking bits of coal, so I'm slightly nervous because I don't know what became of him. I just hope he made it through.
Mark's hoping the Imperial War Museum in Manchester might have the answers to his questions. He's meeting First World War historian Charlotte Chiswick.
So, Charlotte, this is where I am with Private Frederick Brocklehurst. He's been court-martialed, he's been found guilty. What happened after that?
Well, court-martials were very serious, so over 300 men were executed for their crimes. Lots of them were imprisoned, but luckily Fred wasn't one of those.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. On here you can see that he's been sentenced to 56 days and it says FP number 2, and that means field punishment number 2. What that was you were shackled You were placed in one position and you had to stand still for around 2 hours. And you had to do that every day, so you would have had to do that for the next 56 days.
What's the point of that?
The point really was humiliation, because everyone would see you, everyone would know that you'd done something wrong. Now, actually, when we look at his record, it says that this was remitted. So that means that at some point it was realised that perhaps he wasn't guilty.
So his record was cleared, effectively?
It was, and in fact, within a couple of months, he was promoted to Lance Corporal. So, obviously, all was forgiven, really.
Oh, that's great. So what happened to him for the rest of the war, and did he make it out the other side?
He took part in the Battle of Passchendaele, which was a very bloody battle in 1917, and he eventually went home in November of 1918, just after the armistice.
And what kind of life did he lead after the war?
He got married at the end of November 1918.
Oh, right. So she was waiting for him, right?
That
was his... Oh.
Yeah. So it's a young lady called Nellie.
Nellie, brilliant.
Yeah, and so they set up home together. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl.
Did they?
Yes. This is Fred. We think in the 1930s, so he'll probably be in his 40s at the time.
Oh, my God, look at him. Everything he'd been through. Yeah, he deserved his happy ending. I'm thrilled to bits.
It's just a great end to the story. Fred has turned out to be everything I hoped he'd be. He's a hero, he's a man of principle, and put himself on the line for his country. So it just feels right to try and do something that honours Fred, because Fred and people like him deserve to be honoured.
Next time on Emmerdale 1918, the cast of Emmerdale Village gear up for their huge armistice celebration.
Today, we honour those women and men.
And Charlotte Bellamy, better known as Vicar's wife Laurel Thomas, sets off on the trail of a wartime love story from the son of the real Woolpack landlord.
So what I am desperate to know is, did Joshua survive?